It's time now for Call of the Wild, the official weekly coaches show of the Wenatchee Wild. Stay up to date with your team all season long with Call of the Wild. With head coach and GM Bliss Littler, here's the voice of your Wenatchee Wild, Arch Ecker.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Call of the Wild, your weekly Wenatchee Wild coaches show. I'm Arch Ecker and my guest is the head coach and general manager of your Wenatchee Wild, Bliss Littler. Coach, this past weekend, a trip up to Chilliwack and the BCHL Showcase Tournament, a very exciting tournament and something that your team always looks forward to.
Oh, it's a great event. The Chilliwack did a great job putting it on. Many scouts, I guess I'd probably say hundreds of scouts. So a lot of our players did themselves some good. As a coach, you can't wait for the showcase to be done because you really work hard at building a hockey team and playing team hockey, and it's real difficult when you get to a showcase and all those eyeballs are on the kids. They sometimes you revert back and they want to show what they can do and play a little more individual than what we'd like them to do. And a lot of times when you play that way, it doesn't impress the scouts. But we had a lot of kids after the game, both nights, that had a tremendous amount of scouts that came down and wanted to see a number of players. And again, we know that by the time the season's done, the majority of our kids will have Division I commitments. That I'm guessing we'll have 17 to 19 Division I commitments this year. That we're going to be really proud of that.
That would clearly be a franchise record and a high water mark for the ages. You know, this is an event, the BCHL Showcase, that's still relatively in its infancy. I think it's its 5th year of existence. And for you, just your 2nd year in attendance, how much growth did you sense in the event this year as opposed to last?
Well, you were with me most of the time, Arch, that we really focus on our team. That with fast hockey, we're able to do a lot of our scouting with who we're going to play. We can do that with tape, and we spent the majority of our time just with our team. We got up and we played Friday morning, then we had not till Saturday night. But as a coaching staff, we really went through some of the things that what we thought were doing well and what our needs might be. So we spent a lot of time basically worrying about us and fielding questions from the Division I and NHL scouts on our players. So I really didn't spend a lot of time walking around the building and seeing what the Chiefs, the work that they'd put on. But we definitely saw a lot of scouts. So I can't say there's more or less than a year ago, but my guess there are a couple hundred there.
Talk a little bit about the benefit of experience in that. Going back into the showcase last year, you really were stepping into uncharted territory. And this year, it's a whole different approach because you kind of have at least a better sense of what to expect.
Well, there's a big difference in the showcase that our players playing in BCHL and what we played in the North American Hockey League, which both events are absolutely tremendous for the kids. But the event here, it's all about the BCHL. It's all about the teams that are here. We're for the most part all but one game we're played on the big rink. So you're playing in more of the stadium type setting where all the eyeballs that are there, the 200 plus scouts, they're all there watching one game. In the NA, you're playing in a youth hockey environment at the Blaine Super Rink that is a tremendous facility. You have the NA, and you have all the midget hockey, you have all the other stuff that's going on there, and I don't know if it's 6 rinks that they're 6 or 8 rinks.
There's 8 rinks in the building.
Yeah, so there are games going on in all the sheets of ice. So scouts are kind of dispersed between the different rinks, looking at a lot of different kids. So it's a different environment. That's for sure. And they're both outstanding, and it's nice to have every eyeball from the scouts on your team at that time.
I would have to imagine that the level of anxiety from a coaching standpoint gets reduced from the standpoint of when you're traveling. I mean, the restaurants you're going to stop at now, what the rink's going to be like when you get there. You know the hotel you're headed to rather than just kind of heading into the great unknown.
For sure. It's again, we're coaches are creatures of habit. And once you find a good restaurant you like, or a hotel that they take care of you, knowing that you want a meeting room, that you want to have a meal catered in at this time, and that you need a pool for contrast therapy, that when you find a place that works, you kind of just stay with it year after year. And again, a lot of coaches were very open about the places that that work with teams and places that might not. And so we've kind of found throughout the league now what works for us, and that is nice to just have that familiarity right now. And I think Chris Clark does a great job with that kind of stuff.
Friday morning it's a little bit different. You talk about being a creature of habit. When you have to play a game at 10 in the morning, throw all your habits out the door, things are completely approached differently. However, it comes with its own set of benefits as well, because you're not sitting around all day thinking about stuff. It's just kind of get up and go.
Well, there's definitely something to be said for that, Arch. I'd prefer to play at 7, but you get up and there's no anxiety that you get up, have breakfast, and head right to the rink and get your stretch in pregame, and they drop the puck and you're ready to go. But you really have to create your own enthusiasm and create the environment in a building like that. But again, it's a showcase event. The scouts are there. The kids should play hard. You want them to play hard. We tell them that, hey, it doesn't matter if there's 200 people in the building or 6,000. If you're a hockey player, you play hard. And but it's only human nature when they see those eyeballs have a clipboard and in their back pocket they have scholarships that kids play hard.
Your team's played 5 games, and I know whenever you play a game, any game, but particularly on the road, you talk about wanting to set the pace, dictate the pace, and set the tone. Your team scored first in each game so far through 5 games this season, and all of them have been away from the Town Toyota Center, of course. So let's go to that Friday morning game. You've got the Powell River Kings. You get on the board first, and you get off to a good 3-1 lead, and guys start to feel pretty good.
Well, we felt that we played exceptionally well for the most part. That we did. We got off to a good start, and we got a lot of pucks to the net, and it's just unfortunate that we couldn't expand that lead that we had, because we felt it was one of those games that we probably should have scored 6 or 7 goals.
Well, you'd clearly dominated for the most part. I think you ended up out shooting them 50-24 or something like that through 3 periods. But really, for the first time, it was bound to happen at some point, but your team had to face some adversity. After 3 games in Prince George where you more or less just got on top and rolled with it, now all of a sudden you got out to a lead and you saw a team fight back and take the lead away from you. So you're playing from behind for the first time, which is always nice, because in a way as a coach you want to see that. You want to see how your team reacts. Your team reacted favorably.
Yeah, I agree. And when you look at Paul River, Ken does a tremendous job. He's one of the best junior coaches in all of Canada. That they're a well-structured team, very well coached, and they hung in there, and kind of took advantage when we'd make a mistake, and they found ways to score, and they hung around long enough, and they end up with the upper hand there. But I think when they scored late in the game, a lot of times the team would have hung their head and said, hey, we've outplayed this team most of the night and deserve better fate, and just chalk it up as being unlucky. Well, I was proud. Our kids fought back, and that might be a big point come the end of February. So again, we would like to find a way to win that one, but we're very happy with how we competed. Probably have to do a better job of taking the puck or taking care of the puck. We gave up over 10 outnumbered rushes where normally it's 3 or 4, and they definitely took advantage of the chances they had.
One of the guys that's had a bit of a hot hand lately has been Dakota Raby. He's got a goal in 4 straight games now. And, of course, a big one there to tie that one up against Powell River. You can talk a little bit about his play. And, again, he was a kid that hit his 100th game mark the other day as well.
Well, we've seen just a tremendous amount of maturity on Dakota Spark. Again, he's a kid that comes from a great family. kid that plays with a lot of confidence. He's got elite feet as far as he's as quick as they come. And when he gets to college hockey, that's one thing that he does at the elite level, that his feet are real good. And again, he's a very offensive hockey player that's learned to compete in all three zones and be more of a complete hockey player instead of one-dimensional where it's just offense. So we're very proud of how far he's come over the last year and a half.
This is Call of the Wild. It's the weekly Wenatchee Wild Coaches Show. I'm Arch Ecker. My guest is Bliss Littler, the head coach and general manager of the Wild. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk more about the BCHL Showcase Tournament and the upcoming home opener and homestand. That's on the way next here on your Wenatchee Wild Hockey Network. And welcome back to Call of the Wild, your weekly Wenatchee Wild Coaches Show. I'm Arch Ecker with head coach and GM Bliss Littler. We're talking about the BCHL Showcase in which the Wild participated this past weekend up in Chilliwack, BC. Friday morning, a tough loss in overtime to the Powell River Kings. The following night, you bounce back against the Vernon Vipers. And it was a similar game in that you got off to a lead and started to see a team start to try to crawl back against you, but there were lessons that seemed to be learned from the day before.
I think so. I thought it was a great game for us to play. We played a team with a completely different style that they came out and tried to get after us. They tried to intimidate us a little bit with stick work, and they finished a lot of bumps. And I think they're surprised that this year's Wenatchee Wild that our kids are going to fight back. They're going to battle. That you're not going to intimidate us with stick work or a little extra physical play. That our kids have matured and we've grown up a little bit, a little thicker. I think a little tougher. And I think what you saw is our kids stood up for themselves and there was no backing down from them at all.
You know, when you watch the Wenatchee Wild play, a lot of familiar names to Wild fans tend to pop up time and again. Colin Burston, a couple of goals there against Vernon. We talked about Dakota Raby earlier. Of course, Brendan Harris at the top of the league in points overall. Also wanted to touch on one of the new faces, and he's the youngest kid on your team, and that's Slava Demon. Talk about what he means to the Wild family.
Well, Slava he's a high-end player. Again, he walked out of there with a decent amount of college interest and had the NHL people very excited about his future. He's a little quiet with us right now. Quiet kid, not sure. We haven't seen all his personality yet, but I'm guessing that's going to start to come out. But what he has shown is that even at his age, you're not going to scare him. That he's going to make plays and continue to try to make plays. Even when he's under pressure, and I think that's one of his strengths, that he's able to make plays, breaking pucks out under a lot of pressure, and then in the offensive zone, he's scary with some of the plays that he makes, and his ability to get a snapshot or a wrist shot off extremely quick and on net. I think it's pretty impressive.
When you talk about personality, first-year guys, a lot of times, especially this early in the year, they're still a little withdrawn and they haven't quite busted out yet. But one of the first-year guys that I see starting to really emerge personality-wise is Jasper Weatherby.
For sure. He's trying to just see where he fits in. He's a kid with good size. He skates well and there's some offensive ability. But for a first-year guy, he's one of the kids that you're starting to see a little more personality out of him than you have from the others. And we feel that as time goes by, you're going to see a lot more of him.
I know week after week we seem to touch on Brendan Harris, but it seems game after game he does something that makes your jaw drop.
Well, he's extremely creative. He's very offensive, but Arch, I see a pretty complete hockey player right now. That he's competing hard in all three zones. He doesn't cheat for offense. And we're seeing a lot of leadership out of him. But you're right. Once a night, he kind of makes your jaw drop a little bit. I can't believe he just did that. There was no room to make that play, and he found a way to get the puck through. And whether it's on the Charlie stick or on the Brian Williams stick or to beat a guy one-on-one, he's fun to watch.
You know, it's funny, the old phrase used to be a kid could stick handle in a phone booth, but nowadays nobody knows what a phone booth is because you just don't see them anymore. You know, we've talked about leadership on this team in recent weeks, and with that comes the natural discussion. People are asking, who's the captain? And we know that, you know, it's a process. Well, some teams handle it differently, but over your years you've established a method of how you go about ascertaining who wears letters, and where are we there?
Well, we're close to picking our leadership group, and that's 5 to 6 players that we meet with every week, and we basically the whole team goes through a book, and it's just called the Captain's Leadership Manual, and we do a chapter a week. It's 11 chapters, and it's to teach kids how to be leaders. And when you play midget or high school hockey, a lot of times the captain is just simply the best player. Well, high school and midgets, for the most part, you go home to mom and dad. Here you're on the road, and captains I think they're extremely important. And we were blessed the last 2 years with Michael Coyne, where he was one of the best captains that I've had in my career. So where we're at right now is we're picking that leadership group probably by the end of this week. It's just I like to let them emerge. Where they don't fool people. They don't fool their teammates. It's easy to come in for a week or two at the start of the year and, hey, I'm a changed guy. And there's no adversity yet. All of a sudden there's that adversity. Well, are you ready for that leadership role? Nothing worse than giving a kid a letter and then having him not be worthy or ready for it. To wear a letter, you have to be one of the most caring guys. You have to care about your teammates. That we talk about being a servant leader. That you got to serve your team. That it's not that everybody serves you. That you're the leader, and we look for servant leaders, and we teach kids to be that. And really it comes down to caring. And after you find kids that care, then the hardest part is from caring. It moves on to who's going to back up the discipline part. Who's going to, when there are tough things to be said, or there are tough things to do. Like everybody wants to put a C on when it's time for the team pitcher, and things are going well. But when you've dropped 3 or 4 in a row, there's team conflict. That you have to say something. You have to step up, and you have to be the guy. And when there's that saying that when things go right, it's easy. But it's when things go wrong, you take a lot of the heat as a guy that wears a letter. And again, we're pretty diligent when it comes to putting a letter on a player. And last year the only letter we had 1 C. We had no A's, but our leadership group was very strong. We had 6 guys that sat in on our leadership meetings each week, and we just had a C. Generally, most years I have 1 C and 2 A's, and I would expect that's what it'll be this year. But I think the important thing is to make sure that you get those 5 to 7 kids on your leadership group that have a good feeling for everybody, and it takes more than a couple for that group to. You want guys that are able to reach out and connect with every guy on the team, not just who their best friend is. That want them to connect. And so I would say that end of this week we'll probably have a leadership committee or group, and then I would think that in the next 10 to 14 days we'll have the players will pick their captains. That the coaches don't pick them; it's the players, but we try to put the players in the position to pick the right guys, the guys that they can see that they've been here now almost a month, and again, we don't want guys to fool. That we want guys that can come in and be leaders and back that up in good times and in bad.
Well, it's clearly a process that's best not rushed. So, just wanted to address it. It's funny. Players reported August 22nd, and from the time that they show up, it's always a series of landmarks. What's next? It's like that first practice, that first preseason game. Then it's the first game up in Prince George, and the last of those dominoes to fall is going to be the home opener, and that's coming this Friday night against Langley. So talk about what it's going to mean for this bunch Granted, there's a lot of veterans, but to be able to play at home in front of that Town Toyota Center crowd, what that'll mean.
Well, I think we have half our team that's played in this building, and they know the type of support that we have here in Wenatchee and the advantages that we have by playing at home. So they should be ready for that. First year guys, it's a treat, no doubt. Again, generally I like to play on the road first before we come home. Get some of the early jitters out, but there'll be guys that try to do too much. It happens, and it might be some 20-year-olds that are trying to impress their billets and their friends here in town that try to do a little bit too much for the home opener. But it doesn't matter. We need to make the adjustment to playing at home and establishing that the Wolves' Den is going to be the toughest place to pick up points for visiting teams in the league.
The Langley Rivermen last year were your first-round playoff opponent. How much difference is there in this year's team from what you've been able to pre-scout as opposed to the team you saw last playoff season?
Well, they're a little younger than they were a year ago. Again, Bobby, he likes it. Again, he likes it rough and tough. That's the style of hockey they like, and he teaches it well. And again, they've turned into one of our best rivals. That again, I think our guys like playing them, and I think they like playing us. That their games went back and forth most of the year. I think we did edge them in the regular season, and we definitely got them in the playoffs. But they're one of our best rivals, and again, I think we're excited to renew that rivalry come Friday night.
And you'll turn around the following night, and the Salmon Arms Silverbacks will make their only visit of the year to the Town Toyota Center. What can you tell me about that team that you don't see very often?
Well, they moved on a lot of players from last year, so they have a lot of new players. Again, they get up and down the ice pretty well. They're a good skating team, but it's a new team. The majority of their players are new this year. They just moved. They were a little bit older last year and took a run at their division, and so they have a lot of new faces, and it looks like they're starting to gel. Where I know they won their game on Sunday, and I'm sure that we'll need to have our A game both nights this weekend.
It's a 4-game homestand, and you can't overstate the importance of sleeping in your own bed, right?
No. Again, your own bed, the locker room, home fans that need to learn to win at home too. That it's other teams, they come in here, and generally we have much bigger crowds than most places in the league, and so again, as long as it's close, the other team's pretty excited to play in this building.
Well, we'll wish you the best of luck, and we'll chat again next week. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks, Arch.
There you go. That's Call of the Wild, your weekly Wenatchee Wild Coaches Show. I'm Arch Ecker. My guest is Bliss Littler. This show broadcast on NCW Life TV, also juniorhockey.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week. This is your Wenatchee Wild Hockey Network.
You've been listening to Call of the Wild, the official weekly coaches show of the Wenatchee Wild, a presentation of the Wenatchee Wild Hockey Network.